The sun had barely begun to rise over the red horizon of the western plains when the sound of hooves echoed across the valley. Dust swirled through the golden light, tracing the path of a lone rider, making his way toward the tribal lands that few outsiders dared to cross. His name was Ethan Cole, a wanderer, a bounty hunter, and a man running from the weight of his own past. He had no destination, only the whisper of freedom in the wind. But destiny, as it often does, had chosen a path for him long before he could understand it. Deep within the valley, where rivers gleamed like glass and the air carried the scent of sage and wildflowers, the Lacoma tribe gathered for the ceremony of dreams, a sacred ritual that came once every generation. It was said that during the ceremony, the spirits would reveal the face of one's destined partner, the one bound by ancient law and soul connection. Among the gathered stood Ayana, daughter of the tribe's spiritual leader, a woman known for her fierce spirit and untamed beauty. Her dark hair was woven into long braids adorned with feathers, her eyes like molten amber reflecting both fire and wisdom. She was strong, proud, and deeply rooted in the customs of her ancestors. That night, when Ayana sat before the sacred fire, the drums beating in rhythm with her heart, the smoke carried her mind into the spirit world. She saw visions, vast deserts, mountains, a man standing alone under the open sky. His face was unknown to her tribe, but familiar to her soul. She saw his eyes, steady, wounded, searching, and heard the voice of the ancestors whisper, "He is the one. When you meet him, the law shall bind you. He is your husband, chosen by the spirits." When she awoke, her heart pounded with both awe and fear. The elders said the vision of the spirit world could not be denied. The man she had seen would soon arrive. Days later, as the tribe prepared for their annual festival, Ayana rode out beyond the borders to gather herbs near the cliffs. The desert was quiet except for the wind brushing against the rocks. Then in the distance she saw dust rising, hooves pounding closer. Her hand went to the knife at her side as a stranger came into view. His hat pulled low, his leather vest worn from travel. Their eyes met for a single powerful moment that seemed to stretch beyond time. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him, the man from her dream. The same eyes, the same presence. She felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. Not from his horse, but from the echo of destiny awakening. Ethan slowed his horse, lifting his hands in peace. "I don't mean harm," he said, his voice deep and steady. But Ayana's gaze was unshaken. "You came from the west," she said sharply. "No one crosses here without reason." Ethan hesitated, searching for words, unsure how to explain that he was simply lost or maybe searching for something he didn't yet understand. But before he could answer, she stepped closer, her finger pointing toward him with an authority that silenced the desert wind. "You are the man I saw in my dreams," she declared, her voice resonating with power. "According to the sacred law, you are my husband now." Ethan blinked, unsure if he had heard her correctly. "You're what?" he asked, bewildered. But Ayana's expression didn't waver. Her tribe had followed the sacred laws for generations. To defy a vision from the ancestors was to defy fate itself. She turned her horse and gestured for him to follow. "You will come with me. The elders must see you." Despite his confusion, Ethan followed. Something about her, her confidence, her fire, the unspoken pull between them, left him unable to turn away. When they reached the village, the people gathered, whispering in awe and suspicion. The chief, Ayana's father, stepped forward. His weathered face carried years of wisdom. Ayana dismounted and stood tall beside the stranger. "Father," she said with unwavering resolve, "the spirits have spoken. This is the man the vision showed me." The chief studied Ethan with piercing eyes. "You come from the world beyond our lands," he said slowly. "Why should we trust that you are not a danger?" Ethan's voice was quiet but sincere. "I have no reason to harm anyone. I've been running for a long time, from men, from ghosts, from myself. Maybe I was meant to stop running." The chief said nothing for a long while. Finally, he nodded. "If the spirits chose you, then you will face their test. Tonight you will enter the circle of fire. If you emerge unharmed, the ancestors will confirm the bond." That night, as the drums echoed through the darkness, Ethan stood in the sacred circle surrounded by flames, watched by the entire tribe. The air shimmered with heat and mystery. Ayana's gaze never left him. When he stepped through the fire, His body burned with pain, but something deeper stirred, a warmth that wasn't from the flames, but from destiny itself. When he crossed to the other side unharmed, the tribe gasped. The chief lowered his head in reverence. The sign was clear, the spirits had chosen. Ayana stepped forward, her eyes glowing like embers. "The law is fulfilled," she whispered. "From this day you are bound to me." Ethan's heart pounded. He didn't understand it fully, but he couldn't deny the truth in her eyes. Somewhere deep inside, he felt it too, an invisible thread that had been pulling them toward this moment all along. And as the firelight danced around them, two souls from different worlds stood united, not by choice but by destiny itself. The night after the ceremony, the desert seemed different, alive in a way Ethan had never felt before. The stars burned brighter, and the wind carried a strange calm, like the world itself was watching what would happen next. The tribe had accepted him, but not everyone welcomed the outsider, who had become the chosen husband of Ayana. The most respected daughter of the Lacoma, some whispered that the spirits were mistaken, that the prophecy had been misread. Others feared that his presence would bring danger to their people, but Ayana stood firm, unbending as the cliffs that guarded their valley. "The ancestors do not lie," she said to those who doubted. "The flames chose him. His fate is now tied to ours." Ethan, however, was far from certain. He wasn't a man of faith or prophecy. His life had been built on survival, not destiny. Yet every time he looked at Ayana, he felt something ancient stir inside him, something that words could never name. Her presence was both fierce and comforting, like the calm after a storm. She didn't treat him like a savior or a stranger. She treated him like a man she already knew. The spirits brought, "You here for a reason," she told him one morning as they walked through the canyon. "Maybe not to save me, but to save yourself." In the days that followed, Ethan learned about the tribe's ways. He worked with the hunters, repaired fences, and joined the evening gatherings around the fire. But his peace was short-lived. One evening, scouts returned with news that a group of outlaws was heading toward their land. Men Ethan once rode with, led by a man named Briggs, the bounty leader who had betrayed him months ago. They were after gold, water, and vengeance. Ethan's heart sank. The past he had tried to escape was coming back, and this time it would not leave quietly. When Ayana learned of the threat, she refused to let fear take hold. "The spirits warned us," she said calmly. "This is the storm you were meant to face." Ethan stared at her, disbelief in his eyes. "You think destiny wants me to fight the same men who made me what I am? I came here to forget, not to start another war." Ayana stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "You can't hide from what you were," she said, "but you can decide who you will become. Maybe the spirits didn't choose you to be my husband for love or for peace. Maybe they chose you to stand with us when darkness returns." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames that had once marked his acceptance into the tribe. The same fire that had burned around him now reflected his turmoil. He remembered the faces of the men who betrayed him, the blood he'd spilled, the guilt that haunted him. But then he heard a soft voice behind him. "Ayana, you think the fire tests only once?" she asked. "It tests you every day after." She sat beside him, the glow of the fire outlining her face. "I saw you in my dream before I knew your name," she continued. "But I saw more than that. I saw your pain, your heart, your struggle to forgive yourself. The ancestors didn't choose a perfect man. They chose the one who could change." Her words pierced deeper than any wound. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something close to faith, not in gods or laws, but in the possibility of redemption. The next morning he stood before the chief. "If they're coming," he said firmly, "I'll stop them. This is my fight." The chief nodded, solemnly. "Then you are one of us, Ethan Cole." Days later, the outlaws arrived. Their horses kicking up dust, guns gleaming in the sun. They expected fear. Instead, they found the Lacoma warriors, standing side by side with the man they once called brother. The air was thick with tension. Briggs smirked when he saw Ethan. "Didn't think I'd find you playing house with savages," he taunted. Ethan's jaw tightened. "You won't find me running anymore," he said coldly. The battle that followed was fierce. Bullets and arrows filled the air. the clash of two worlds echoing across the valley. Ethan fought with everything he had, not for money or revenge, but for the people who had given him a second chance. When Briggs aimed his gun at Ayanna, Ethan threw himself in front of her, the shot tearing across his shoulder. Pain exploded through him, but he stayed on his feet, his fury burning brighter than the wound. He charged forward, disarming Briggs and knocking him to the ground. The outlaw leader gasped for air as Ethan pointed his own gun down. "It ends here," Ethan said. When it was over, silence fell across the valley. The outlaws fled, leaving behind their greed and defeat. The tribe gathered around Ethan, helping him back to the fire where Ayanna waited. She pressed her hand against his wound, her eyes full of tears that she refused to let fall. "You have done what the spirits asked," she whispered. "You are not bound by dreams anymore, you are bound by choice." Ethan looked up at her, his voice hoarse. "Then I choose you," he said simply. And for the first time since the vision, Ayanna smiled, a smile that carried the weight of destiny fulfilled and the promise of a new beginning. As dawn broke over the desert, the fire's glow faded into the light of a new day. Two souls, one born of the earth, the other forged by pain, had found each other not by accident, but by the pull of something greater than fate. The prophecy had come true, but it was their courage, not the spirits, that gave it meaning. And so their story began, not as strangers bound by law, but as partners bound by choice, standing together beneath the endless sky where dreams and reality finally became one.